Howdy guys, it's Joe here today talking about Moon and his Reinhardt on defense in Season 5. And overall I'm going to say, right now Reinhardt's still in a pretty decent place. I feel like he's still a really strong pick, and especially if you have a lot of hit scan, he can be very strong. But he's not quite as good as he's been in the past, and he's definitely a little bit harder to play because if the enemy team has a dive comp, as we see right here, you can't do way too much, honestly. We're seeing this right here. You can try to block as much damage as you can for your teammates, have them be as close to you as possible to block as much damage, try to swipe at them the best you can, but overall it's going to be very difficult for you. You can try to have a Zarya, which is actually really nice for this, or have a Winston, which actually counters dive comps pretty well. You know, Winston does really great against other Winstons if you have a nice defensive comp. It also does great against people like Lucio and people like Genji, so, you know, you can do well with that, but as far as Reinhardt himself, you mainly just have to try to focus on protecting your DPS and protecting your hit scan and hoping that they're good enough to actually kill all these people that are flying around the map. It's really difficult, and especially on places like 2CP or maps that are pretty closed in, it's a little bit harder. Maps that are a little bit more open are a little bit easier because, of course, hit scan do a bit better. But yeah, we can see you can still do quite a bit. But if people just dive straight onto you, mainly what you want to do is run backwards, try to stall for as much as you can, and just go on from there. Right here we see, of course, the Zarya switching to Winston, probably a good switch. And now we see Reinhardt just sticking it up in the front as he's always been doing. And what you can do as Reinhardt a lot is stall for a lot of time because you're kind of making people not want to go in because, you know, you had that shield. Even if you're not necessarily actually stopping them, because often in a dive comp they could just walk past your shield and couldn't really do way too much, but you can really stall for quite a bit of time just from simply being there, even if they could just kind of ignore you being there. It's kind of weird, but it's just something that does happen. Maybe it's just people are used to shields from past seasons, and as well having your shield at full power still is pretty nice because you can block certain ultimates, so the enemy team will probably want to try to get through that either way. Now we're here, of course, we're trying to get high ground. Of course, you want to stay on the bottom if you want to make sure that your teammates aren't going to die. You could have killed himself right there and maybe taken out that Tracer, but it probably wouldn't have been a worthwhile trade. But yeah, you can stay at the bottom if you want to stall the point, or get to the high ground if you want to make sure that your hit scan are going to not die, and that's really up to you. If you have nobody else that can stay on the point, you know, you'll have to jump down, but if you have maybe a Winston that can stay there for a few seconds, or a D.Va or something, I'd say it's probably a good idea to try to save your people for as long as possible. Now, as well, I'm going to tell you as Reinhardt, if you don't have any good hit scan players, it's probably not the best idea to pick him right now. Of course, you can, and it does work some games, and if you are a Reinhardt only player, definitely go for that. Or even if you just like to play a lot of Reinhardt, and especially on defense, I feel like that's a good idea. But the problem comes where if you don't have any good hit scan players, and you have, for example, Genji and Tracer versus their Genji and Tracer, you can't really synergize with them as well as someone like a Zarya, or as well with somebody like a Winston. Reinhardt just doesn't synergize way too greatly with those characters, except for your ultimates. So if you can happen to stall for a long time, get a lot of nice E's and get your ultimates in there, then you can synergize well. So you kind of want to focus on getting as much of those E's as possible to synergize with your ultimates. But if that doesn't work out, yeah, you're not going to do way too well, honestly. Reinhardt just doesn't fit those characters quite as well as a lot of the hit scan characters. So just do keep that in mind when you're thinking about your team comps. It does work sometimes. I'm not going to say it never works, but it's just a little bit more jank, I'm going to say. Of course, as well, right here we see often Reinhardt putting up his shield. When people get right next to him, he swipes at them because it makes them want to get off the point, which of course stalls for more time and gives his DPS more time to stop the enemies. And as well, he goes in for some nice shifts, gets a kill right there on the Tracer, and they're really close to winning right here. He gets killed immediately, I think. Or, no, never mind. We take that back. He gets a nice ultimate, kills one person, and then he gets killed. And we see our team getting pretty close to losing. The enemies are getting a lot of time right now. As you see right there, they're getting time up, but our team is all waiting right next to the point. We're thinking about switching, but decide not to. But yeah, our teammates don't trickle in one at a time. They wait until the very last second and jump in all 4 at a time and actually win the point. So if you can't happen to do that for yourself, definitely do that. As well as Reinhardt, I want to remind you guys, I wouldn't actually charge into the team like ever. If there's someone off to the side, or if there's somebody that's, you know, maybe a bit overextended and you can charge backwards to be safe still, then definitely go for the charge. Even if you miss, you aren't way too out of position, and it isn't way too bad. But if you're charging straight forward into the enemy team, I know that it can be a good idea, but unless you're really, really knowledgeable at when to do it, if you're just kind of doing it because you don't know what else to do, don't do that. It can be a good idea, but for the majority of the people, and myself included, you're probably just going to kill yourself the majority of time, and it would have been a better idea to recharge your shield and, you know, take a bit of damage, hit people off the point, or just do other stuff that Reinhardt's good at doing. Maybe even get one more E on the enemies so you can charge your ultimate faster. There's a lot of stuff that could be a little bit better. Of course, you might be risking not getting an easy pick, but that's kind of up to you what's worth it. And right here again, a thing I want to mention to you guys, this Reinhardt likes to stand in corners a lot. That's a great idea because it blocks your backside. And if someone gets to your backside, well, you can just turn around and E-swing at them, or turn around and charge at them. And there's not much they can do. They can either run away and you stall more time, or they can try to shoot you and hope that, you know, you lose against them. Right here we see something I don't really like, of course, Reinhardt being nano boosted. I feel like a lot of people still do this, and while it does work sometimes, in this situation it worked pretty well, a lot of the times I don't feel like it's a great idea to get kills. We saw Reinhardt before with the speed boost, nano boost. That was great. You can run up, get a lot of kills, punch people in the face, beat a lot of these flankers, but now you can't really do that. They can just easily run away. It's not way too great. You can do the nano boost though if the enemy team is all diving and you just want your Reinhardt to stay alive for longer. Often as Reinhardt, even if you're nano boosted, you can still hold up your shield and try to protect your teammates just so that you don't happen to have them die as fast. A lot of the times someone like a Tracer will try to solo ult you with somebody like a Genji trying to hit you with a first hit with their Dragon Blade, and then you're just going to die normally, but if you're nano boosted, you are not going to die. So you gotta remember that. Again, right here though, he's running off to the corner. On this point in particular, because it's 2 CP, a lot of the time, oh, unlucky. A lot of the time he's kind of focusing more on staying alive, at least for himself, than his entire team, because if he can stay alive on the point, he can stall a lot of the time for his team. Unfortunately, you know, his supports are focusing on everyone else, though. He's running a little bit low on HP. He could try to go right here for a nice sneaky shift, and that's exactly what he does. Unfortunately, he misses, but since the team fight is so close anyway, and since this is right next to a health pack, which he can just immediately get back onto the point with, you can see how that wasn't really that risky of a charge. It was a pretty smart charge, and if you know that there's a health pack somewhere, you actually can charge into that room, and if you hit somebody, well, there you go. You got to kill and you get a health pack. Otherwise, you just get a health pack. But yeah, it especially changes the dynamic a lot on 2CP. If you have noticed this, Reinhardt on 2CP is a lot more stally, as most characters are. You want to just push people off as much as you can, and you often don't go as much to the high ground, or as much next to DPS, because it's a little bit safer, let's be honest, on 2CP, because there's a lot more walls. While if you're playing, again, on something like, let's say, payload, your DPS will probably stay a lot nearer to you so that they can get on the payload and stall for that for a second. Right here we see, of course, the shift backward, a very safe one. He could have shifted forward, but probably not the best idea. And again, we see a Reinhardt getting nano boosted. Again, not my favorite thing, but the thing I want to mention is as well, there's no one else really better to nano boost on their team right now. He can try to go for maybe like a nano Tracer and try to get a lot of damage off that, which can work, but it's not quite as safe as someone like nano Reinhardt. And of course we have a D.Va switch because that helps you stall for a lot of time on the point. Tracer helps you stall, and since they don't have a soldier or a McCree, I think McCree switched off, not exactly sure, but since they don't have a soldier to nano and then soldier ult, yeah, they probably want to just use it on the Reinhardt and get a little bit more time. Anyways, we're off to offense, of course. And on offense, these characters, or these players, usually in these top 500 Grandmaster things, they just maul on offense. So that's exactly what we're going to be seeing here. He runs around the corner. Of course, this is a place that a lot of people like to go, trying to block as much of those, I think, Symmetra turrets, or that's just Zarya. Yeah, that looks like a Symmetra turret. So trying to block as much of that as possible, trying to charge as much of the Ana ult as possible, and making sure that he doesn't walk around the corner, because if he did, he'd pretty much be easy pickings. Unfortunately, he gets hit by the McCree anyways. But still, he was doing his best, and his shield was just running low, let's be real, and he didn't get quite as much healing as he would have hoped for. Anyways, right here, the enemy team does not have a dive comp, so you should be doing quite a bit better. You can have like a counter engage dive comp on 2CP defense, which actually does work against Reinhardt, at least in my own experience, but it is a little bit hard to pull off. There we go. His enemy, we see right there, the enemy Reinhardt charges straight into this team. And it didn't seem like the best idea. His team could have definitely capitalized a lot better, killed that Reinhardt. If we didn't have missed, he would have died. As you can see, it's a little bit more unsafe. He did do it because he could just engage as well as not being separated too far away from his team, at least the enemy Reinhardt, but still, it should have been punished a little bit better. Anyways, right here we see a lot of high ground. I think someone jumps down there for some reason. Oh yeah, to pick off that Symmetra. The McCree is really balling down there. He's protecting his supports up high, up safe. There's that Widowmaker up there, just trying to protect his teammates as well as he can. And they got that, I think, yeah, Symmetra turret right there, and finally they just have, I think it's just I don't even know who it is right now. I'm pretty sure it's just Widowmaker who's alive, who eventually jumps onto the point, and then they're dead. Or I guess it was Anna. Either way. Finally, they finished out the point, though, and again, you didn't really have to do way too much. All you had to do, essentially, was just jump onto the point, and before that, just hold that right click and protect his teammates. I feel like a lot of people kind of underestimate how powerful simply just protecting your hit scan and protecting your teammates can be, as people are really used to right now, diving on people instead. And if you can just kind of turn around your mouse a little bit, a lot of people, when they're playing Reinhardt, they just simply stay one direction while shielding. But if you kind of move it around a little bit, a lot of the time you're just going to hit a lot more people than the enemy would expect. Alright, here we see a great nano boost in my opinion, you know, allowing for a lot of free engages, and his teammates, while he isn't necessarily holding up his shield to protect them, he's using his body to protect them. His teammates can shoot right behind his body, and it's going to be really hard for any projectile character to actually hit his teammates, because he is protecting them with his nano boosted body. Alright, there we see some nice stuff, you know, blocking as much as you can against that McCree. Of course, finally getting a nice ult on all those guys. A thing that the enemy team's been doing that I really don't like is that they've been allowing Reinhardt to get a lot of ease and standing 1 inch away from him, and especially on point 1. They essentially lost the point anyway, but they jumped onto it and they gave our team a lot of free ultimates. So that wasn't the best thing. We pushed that right off the cliff, or maybe he walks off of it. I don't know what happened right there. I think we push another person off the cliff, or they walk off of it as well. So that's weird. Of course, close range you do want to try to get to if you are swinging as Reinhardt, and you want to stay far range if you're trying to protect your teammates. It's a little bit weird to get used to. But as well, close range does allow you to charge up your ult a lot faster, which lets you combo a lot faster. So you have to decide when you're fighting people, do you want to charge in, get a close range ult, or stay away. Now, something I finally want to mention, with Widowmaker on your team and with McCree on your team, a lot of the times, a lot of Reinhardts I see will just stand right back next to their Widowmaker, or maybe ask their Widowmaker to come up front. But actually, if you are causing a lot of distractions up in the front line, even if you aren't necessarily protecting the Widowmaker, simply by taking everyone's attention away from them, you're kind of like protecting them while not protecting them. I don't know, it's something you want to remember. As well, right there, we see a great thing. Reinhardt walks backwards out of the Winston shield. He could have walked forwards and tried to get a little bit more damage, but by walking backwards, it allowed himself to be healed a little bit more by our Ana player. And since they only have to get the first point, you probably do want to make sure that everyone's still alive. Right here, of course, we finally get charged into. Luckily, I think we get a flashbang by someone, so we don't die as the Reinhardt. Otherwise, we probably would have. And I think Zarya's ulted right there, which is also a really great idea. Of course, right there, do a butt ton of damage, eat that guy in the back line. And now, since we're finally to the end, we want to try to push this Winston off the point the best we possibly can. He's just going to be jumping around, but we finally do finish him off. Widowmaker's doing work in the back line. We're distracting a lot of people in the front line, swinging around, and we finally take off that Tracer. And that's generally how you kind of want to play this. Especially against, you know, Diocomps, I'm going to say it will be a little bit difficult. A lot of the times they can just run around in your backline and you can just kind of mash around. But if you have your backline stay a little bit further back, and if you try to take the brute of the damage, you can do pretty well. As well with that, if you have really good aiming DPS, you can just kind of like spaz your shield around and protect your DPS from taking a lot of damage, depending on how well the enemy team is at killing your DPS and how good they are at their characters. So just kind of think about those two things. Overall, Reinhardt, I'd say still in a good place, still can get some mighty good ults, still can get some great picks, just a little bit harder to play, and a lot of the times you're going to get mauled a bit faster than before because people are just going to ignore your shield. But still, if you want to play him, definitely would recommend him, and he's still pretty good in Season 5 in my own opinion, and especially if your team isn't good at dive comps, switch it up to Reinhardt and you might get yourself a win. Anyways, as always, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, make sure to leave a like. Tell me who you want me to see in the next video, and if you want to see more tanks, because I feel like a lot of people like tanks, but I don't know, maybe it's just a vocal minority. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a wonderful day.